Welcome to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast, the show for women who are seeking more fulfillment in life and simply not getting it from their current situation. We focus specifically on careers, but hey, we spend a lot of time in our careers, so making changes here will definitely create an impact in your overall happiness. I'm your host, Simone Morris, and my mission is to empower women to succeed. I believe that in order to powerfully own your career, you must decide and claim that you want to sit in the driver's seat. You must know that you deserve better and be willing to not only do the requisite work, but be willing to go out on a limb to ensure your success. Each episode focuses on profiling a leader who is clearly demonstrating ownership of their career. Join me and my guests as we explore career journeys and bring you actionable strategies to use to get into the driver's seat for your career. Because ultimately, your career is your responsibility. Let's get into the show. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. You know that I get excited every week because I love what I do, and I love to bring to you just inspiring stories of leaders who are just crushing it. And this week is no exception. I have a friend and a colleague who I greatly respect, the fabulous Djuana Beamon. Djuana, welcome to the show.
Oh, Simone, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be with you this morning and just looking forward to our conversation.
Wonderful. Well, I want to go behind the scenes and hear about your career journey. I know that we are both in the diversity and inclusion space, and you're a seasoned practitioner with decades of experience. And in fact, we met, I think it's 8 or 9 years ago, many years ago, but I have been following your career. I know you've given me some fabulous mentoring over the years, but where was Djuana before diversity and inclusion? Just give us a little bit of the backstory before we catch up to 2020.
Yeah, sure. So I actually have a business background. So I was working for a company in retirement services and always doing something around diversity and inclusion off the side of my desk, whether it was leading a business resource group or being on the diversity committee. But my background is really business, and have my MBA from University of New Haven. And so, one of the things I've always said is understanding the business makes it a lot easier to do this diversity work, because you can talk the talk that needs to be listened to with business leaders, because you understand the challenges, and then you can bring the diversity and inclusion lens to the business.
Wonderful. I think that makes so much sense. And, I'm sure that contributes to your success in doing this work. I wonder, when did you realize that you were in control or in the driver's seat, if you will, for your career?
Yeah. So, early on, Simone, in my career, I always, you had to wait, right? You had to wait for your manager to recognize your accomplishments and give you that next promotion or that next opportunity to come to you. And when I truly realized I was in the driver's seat of owning my career was when I learned that I could say no to opportunities because they didn't fit where I saw myself going or where I thought I needed to be or where I wanted to be. And so that's when I was like, okay, I own my career and I've got to drive it. And so I've always managed my career. I don't let my career manage me.
That is so powerful. Don't let your career manage you. So where did you get the notion that you could say no? Because, for me, I know I have got a Caribbean heritage. And so, I'm taught at a very young age, be grateful that you have a job, you have a paycheck, you have benefits. And honestly, in my time in corporate America, I have a memorable experience when I said no that did not go so well. So talk to me about that and give our listeners some inspiration and advice on how to be savvy in saying no.
I have always had strong mentors and coaches, and I've sought them out. And I've had different mentors and coaches for different aspects of my career and different times in my career. And so having somebody that can be a sounding board for you and let you know, no, that's not the time to say no, or that's not the way to say no, was critically important. So it wasn't that I was just, an opportunity would come through and I would just say, oh no, I'm not going to do that. It had to be, no, I'm not going to accept this opportunity, and here's why. And not necessarily that I had to explain to the other person the why, but I knew the why. And so, just being very savvy and being very clear. I have a friend and mentor and coach now who I talk to on a regular basis. And one of the things that she always challenges me is get clear and get real clear about what you want, what you're willing to accept, what you're not willing to accept, and then you can move from there.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Well, tell us, with your many, many years of experience, what would you say your formula is for successfully owning your career? What are the key ingredients to be successful in your career?
Yeah, the formula that's worked for me has really been being true and authentic to myself and my values. I have been in organizations where it didn't sit well with me. And so I knew it was time to move on. And I heard somewhere this acronym CARE, and it really resonated with me, and I've carried it with me. And CARE stands for be creative, be authentic, be resilient, and be empathetic. And so when you live by that acronym of CARE and caring for yourself first and foremost, as women, and especially as women of color, and you talked about your Caribbean heritage, we care for everybody else first, and not necessarily caring for ourselves. And what I found is that will, if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't take care of anybody else. And so really being authentic to yourself and your values, and then really practicing that acronym of CARE.
I love that. I love that. The last episode that was released for the podcast, the title of that episode was Show Up Unapologetically as You. And I love that. And many of our guests have talked about the importance of being authentic. Now, what do you make of authenticity in 2020? Because authenticity pre-2020 was had a different meaning. Authenticity as a leader in 2020 means something different. So give us a little guidance or thoughts on that, Djuana.
And I think we need to be very clear about the difference between authenticity and being respectful, and respecting each other. And so just because I'm being authentic doesn't mean that I am going to say something that is intentionally offensive to you. So, we have to be able to have conversations where we can respect each other and sometimes agree to disagree. And I can still be authentic in doing that. So I think we just have to be really clear about the difference between authenticity and being true to yourself and your values and being disrespectful.
Well said. Well said. I wonder, you've taken some risk in terms of your career and in terms of upward mobility in your career. So talk to us about how you look at risk, and any advice to others, our listeners, on how to embrace risk as a tool in their career.
Yeah. And again, when you take risk, it has to be calculated risks, right? It can't just be, I'm not going to just walk in tomorrow and quit my job knowing that I have a family, a mortgage, and all those things that I have to take care of. But I'm also going to look at, opportunities as they come along. And sometimes I've turned down opportunities that were more money because they weren't going to get me to where I needed to be. Or I've taken lateral moves because I needed a certain skill set that I knew that move would provide for me that I didn't have. And so one of the things, again, as women, we don't tend to do very well is take risks on ourselves. And so, you've heard it time and time again, especially in diversity and inclusion work. Men will see a job opening, it will have 10 credentials or qualifications that are required, they will have 4 of the 10 and they will go for it. And 9 times out of 10, they'll get the job. We'll have 9 of the 10 qualifications. And just because we don't have that one, we won't even apply for the job. And so those are the types of risks that we need to be willing to take. And there are many times that one thing that you don't have is something that you can learn. It's not even something that you have to have. So I would say, just when you're looking at opportunities, whether it's a job opportunity, a relationship opportunity, whatever that opportunity is, look at what are the things that you contribute and you bring to the table and take that risk.
I love that. Now you just mentioned relationship. I want to talk about relationships and the people that you have on your success squad. You mentioned before mentors, that you have a conversation with mentors, coaches. Who's on your success squad? Who sets you up for success in your career?
I call them my personal board of directors. And I have a variety of folks. I have those folks that are going to tell me straight and say, no, don't do that, or don't say that. I have those folks that are, my daughter is one of my biggest champions. She's 23, and a lot of the things that I have done in my career have been for her, because I know I have this person looking up to me. I have my mentees, so I don't just, seek out mentors. I also one of the things that I am huge on is giving back. And so I have mentees, and I learn just as much from them as they do from me, and sometimes more. And then I have folks like you, and I have a whole, what we call our diversity diva squad. That we have these conversations and text message change that we can just vent when we need to and vent appropriately. Sometimes this work is thankless. A lot of times it's thankless. It's stressful. It's hard. It's gotten harder over the years, and this year has gotten extremely hard. And so you have to have those folks that you can kind of take that mask off with and just have those real down-to-earth conversations. Cry if you have to, have a glass of wine if you whatever it is you need in that moment. You have to have those folks on board. And then the one final thing I will say is always have people on your success squad or your board of directors that don't look like you. And so I have always had white men in my success squad. I've always had white women in my success squad, Hispanic, Asian, people that LGBTQ, just a myriad of people that don't look like me, because they bring a different perspective.
I love that. And that attributes to the work that you do. So you're intentional about being inclusive, walking the talk, and also on your personal board of directors. I wonder, how do you manage to nurture all those relationships? Because oftentimes some of us struggle with networking and really getting to true relationship building. How do you manage to nurture that? Are you having a quarterly personal board of directors meeting? I see that in jest a little bit, but how do you manage to stay connected and really nurture these relationships?
I don't have a quarterly board of directors meeting, but now that you say that, I like that idea. So I might have to do that. It is hard, because we've got our day-to-day lives, we've got work, we've got family, we've got everything else going on. And so sometimes it will go months and maybe even a year before I might talk to somebody, not intentionally, just because life happens, and on both sides. But what I have tried to do is just every once in a while, think of somebody I haven't talked to in a while and just send them a quick text message. Doesn't have to be a long, drawn out conversation. Just, hey, how you doing? We haven't talked in a while. Just wanted to check in. And that may lead to a quick text back, just to say, oh, we're doing great, family's doing well, and that's it. Or it may lead to oh, I was just thinking about you, let's schedule some time to talk, or let's have coffee. Now we're having virtual coffees, right? A perfect example, last night, one of the people that I was just talking about, I sent her a quick text message, hey, do you have a minute? And immediately my phone rang and she called me right back. And so it's just, you have to take those moments now, especially being in a virtual environment. where we're not in a physical work building, if you will. Lately, what I've been trying to do is send an IM every once in a while to somebody that I normally would have seen passing in the hallway that I don't get to see anymore, and just say, hey, haven't, you know, I miss your smiling face, or just something like that. And it's just those quick touch points. One of the things that, you know, I truly believe is building your network, because you always want to have a network and not need it, rather than needing a network and not having it. And so if you can just do those quick touch points, doesn't have to be long drawn out, just something to let people know that you're thinking about them, it will at least keep that relationship going.
Yeah, I think that's so vital what you're saying, Djuana. I mean, I remember running into you in March in Vegas, and I hadn't seen you for some time, and we
Right.
kind of broke the rules because, you know, I was in disbelief of COVID, and I was so excited to see you after all these years. And my, how different the year has unfolded.
Yes, I will tell you, so that I flew home from that conference that Sunday, and I have not been to work physically been to work since then. So
Wow.
it's been an interesting year.
It definitely has been. I remember just how life changed. I mean, that was around, I think, March 5th to the 8th or so. And I returned home, and life completely changed, right? So how are you having to show up differently in your career as a result of where we are in 2020?
Yeah, you know, it has been, I will say, since the senseless murder of George Floyd, and then we had Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, and then, you know, of the just a continuation. Um, Things have gotten even more difficult. We've had to have conversations in corporate America that we've never had before. And we're having them through virtual means. So you're having these conversations for the first time around race and racism and inequality and social injustice, and very, very deep conversations. And you're having to do them in a virtual flat platform. And so the way that I have had to show up is exactly what I said earlier, being authentic. And just, you know, I start a lot of conversations, especially earlier, you know, closer to when George Floyd was murdered, with, I'm not okay. And your Black employees are not okay. And that's okay. And so just having to be authentic and let people know that, you know, just because something happens 500 miles away from Connecticut doesn't mean it doesn't impact me and influence me. And so, and that's the same for our colleagues as well. And so, you know, just again, it goes, for me, it always centers right back to authenticity.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking about how we've had to embrace authenticity, or turn authenticity on its head, roll
Yeah.
it around, and look at it differently. And also vulnerability, as
Yeah.
leaders, just embracing vulnerability, because that's what's needed in 2020. Yeah. So
Absolutely.
what do you say to those people who feel like they don't have time to focus on their careers because of 2020? We're in a virtual world. There's a lot of noise, whether it's, you know, as you mentioned about George Floyd or about the election. There's so many things, health concerns competing for our attention. Don't have time to focus on my career, but you are starting a new opportunity. You've made time for your career. What advice or what comments would you like to make around really making time for your career in 2020?
If you don't, who will?
Mm,
As you said, you know, opportunities are still out there. Headhunters are still calling. And so the opportunities are there. And if you're not in the candidate pool, guess what? Somebody else is going to be. And so if you are, you know, thinking about this, you know, you were going to make a move this year, and now you're thinking, oh, well, I'll wait until next year. Next year, that opportunity might not be there. And so if you're really serious about your career, and I would encourage you, if you to get serious, you've got to make time for yourself in your career. You should always have your resume updated. And that doesn't mean you're always looking for a job, but you've always got your ear to the ground, and you know what's happening in your industry or in your profession or whatever. Be connected to industry organizations, so that even if you're not actively looking, you're attending those SHRM meetings or those diversity meetings or those sales conferences virtually. Everything has gone virtual this year. So it's not like the world has completely stopped. And a lot of things I'm finding, because they have had to go virtual, have been free.
Yes.
So if you think about, for example, Black Enterprise just did their Black Men Excel conference, which was fabulous. It was a Black men's conference, but I even, jumped in on a couple of different sessions, and it was totally free. So look for those opportunities and just continue to, make sure that you're taking that time and making that time for your career.
Love that. Love that. Since we segued, let's talk about resources as we begin to wrap up. What resources have you found to be really helpful to you in your career?
I would say, again, seeking out mentors, reading whatever you can get your hands on, and just, thinking about expanding your depth and breadth of knowledge. I have a stack of books that I haven't gotten through, or I am in some stage of reading all of them. So I really need to get back to that. As I'm coaching other people to take that time, I need to take my own advice and do that. Again, industry networks and conferences, and then just looking at what's next. Where is it that you want to be? Early in my career, I was always told, don't dress for the career you have, dress for the career you want. And so, I think about that also in my career itself. I'm not thinking about the job that I'm in. I'm performing in the job that I'm in, and I'm performing well in the job that I'm in. Let me be clear about that. But I'm also thinking about what's that next level. And so I'm performing at that next level in my current career. And so when that next opportunity comes, I'm ready.
I love that. I love that, because oftentimes some of us get short-sighted and we're not strategic about managing our careers. So I love what you're saying. And it sounds like you got some really good advice along the way. Wonderful. Well, tell our listeners how they can stay connected with you if they'd like to after this episode airs.
Absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's Djuana Beamon, Djuana Beamon. Or you can also find me on Twitter at Beamon Div, Beamondiv.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I said that was the final question, but let me ask you, if you were to have a book title for your career body of work, what would it be?
Oh, my career body of work. One of my favorite songs is Jill Scott, Living My Life Like It's Golden. And so it would probably be something around that. I don't know exactly what the title would be, but probably something around, living my life like it's golden.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Djuana, it's been my pleasure to have you on the podcast. I know our listeners are going to get so much value from this episode, so be sure to get your notepad out. But I do want to say thank you really for all the wisdom that you brought onto this week's episode of the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Simone.
Wonderful. Thank you for listening to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. It is my hope that you enjoyed today's episode. You can check out the show notes for this episode on the SimoneMorrisEnterprises.org website by clicking the podcast menu. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and tell a friend or two about it.